and on the back of the package, it showed a Toby. So that is another thing I have to track down, and I'm probably never gonna find it because it seems exceptionally rare. Well, that didn't last real fucking long. So what is up, members of the Peter Griffin household? It's your host with the most, Troublesome Junction, back at it again with another Hornby Clockwork Thomas & Friends review. Now, this is probably one of the items out of this entire line that I wanted the most, as I had mentioned in the Hornby Percy video. And it was very ironic because that video was filmed a couple of months ago, and I honestly never thought I would be in a position where I would own this guy, because you never really see these guys listed. I know a couple of people that have them either out of box or in package, but I've never seen, you know, just these floating around on eBay. Crazy enough, I didn't even know this existed until I was doing more research behind the line for the Hornby Percy video. But here he is right here. I ended up paying around $30 plus shipping for this guy, and I'm really happy to add him to the collection because, as I've stated in many videos, I am a huge Hornby Clockwork fan. I love this line to death, and I really wish that it got further expanded beyond just this cast of characters up here. Unfortunately, with this line, it is very overlooked and definitely underappreciated. I noticed that there aren't very many videos talking about this line. I've seen a lot of people talk about the original Hornby Clockwork engines with the flanged wheels, you know, either the 040 and even some of the 060 versions of Thomas and Percy, but I really don't see people talk about the flat-wheeled versions, you know, in this specific line that had the very unusual couplings. And what I love the most about this line is it takes all of the detail, all of the charm that I and many others love about the Hornby Thomas & Friends line, and makes it into a toy. For those of you who are familiar with my channel, you probably know the fact I love toys like this, where it captures the feel and vibe of the original, but it has definitely got a much more durable play with mentality in mind. I like to fiddle around with the, you know, toys and stuff in my collection, so having something that looks as good as this, but is also meant to be played with, unlike a traditional model train, I'm an absolute sucker for it. So with me reviewing this line, I've definitely started about 3 World Wars because of people don't like the fact that I'm unboxing these guys. But again, I'm all about toy preservation and documentation. There are no videos online of people reviewing these guys in depth. You know, I really detest those types of videos. If you got a Thomas & Friends item, and especially if it's much more obscure and kind of rare, talk about it, damn it. So my message to anyone that I might offend by unboxing this guy: I don't care.
Hey, Stamp, is everything all right? Oh my God!
By the way, shop Stamp Player Store and use code TBJunction10 to get 10% off your first order. Bye!
Anyways, now that our boy can breathe here, if you take a look at him, he looks basically identical to the normal Hornby Toby. I absolutely love that face, especially in comparison to the Bachman one. This one just has a much more neutral facial expression, and to me, I think it looks all in all better. I really wish I did have a normal Hornby Toby to compare this guy to, because one of the common things people rag on with Hornby Toby is that he's fucking massive. And if I were to do a quick size comparison, I grabbed Thomas over here. Yeah, I definitely think that is true, that the Hornby Clockwork Toby is also big. He should be around the same height as Thomas. Grabbing Percy over here as well. You can, oh my goodness. Yeah, you can't even really use the excuse of, well, maybe there's just a different mechanism. But if Thomas and Percy are fine, why would you need to make him bigger than he really needed to be? Also got the ginormous Hornby Bill and Ben mold, which this also had complaints of being too big. And just look at how big Toby is compared to him. I think of that one Simierski's review he did on Toby, where here's the fucking Titanic, and here is Toby. But I can give it a pass though, because bottom line, If you're buying this line, chances are you probably don't care about hyper accuracy and realism for HO and OO skill, because as I said again, this is a toy line. It's 3 and up, and it was meant to be sort of like a predecessor to Hornby Jr. So if you're buying this, you're more or less buying this because it's Thomas and Friends, not for realism on your layout, because unfortunately the flat-wheeled line is not compatible with a layout. You probably could go through and replace these wheels with the traditional Hornby Clockwork wheels, but I'm not going to be the one to do that, so I'll leave that up to you know, the community to figure that out. But looking at this as a Toby model, it is a damn good one. I love the matte finish paint. As I stated in the build video, I absolutely think matte finishes on model trains really elevate a model. And for the fact that this retailed for around 9 British pounds, that is insane. I'm telling you, Hornby, if you ever get the license to make Thomas and Friends stuff again, I'd love to see this line come back. It is absolutely phenomenal. The 7 on the side is very nicely printed. It does have window detail up here. And on the sides, it makes sense, though, of why these are just blacked out, because of course, behind this is the actual clockwork mechanism, so you really don't want that to be shown. I think it's a similar case to like Bill over here, where the back window is supposed to be open, but of course, since the mechanism is there, you really don't want to have too much of that exposed. But again, it also does paint the question of, they painted the detail on this Toby here, they didn't paint the little back parts of Bill here. They didn't even do that for the normal Hornby Bill and Ben release, so a little odd there, but it's nice to know that they took the time out to paint the windows and such for Toby. Granted, they probably felt obligated to do that, because if they didn't have any painted detail up here, it would literally look like a Lincoln log cabin on wheels. It's nice to see the windows are painted up here, because I believe on the packaging it showed, yeah, right here, the Toby didn't have painted windows, so I'm guessing that's just a prototype picture, but glad to see that that is carried over to here. Has a nice painted headlamp right there. All of the details they really spared no expense when it came to paint details and apps. Even the tiny little fake hook down there for where the coupling is supposed to be is painted in full. Nice red buffer beam there, solid matte finish. And of course, buffers, they're not sprung, of course, because why would they need to be? And on the opposing side of this, it does have a giant hole right here. It looks like Toby's been shot or something. This is, of course, for the key for winding it up and having it act as a wind-up toy. So it does make sense of why that's there. If I actually grab Bill and line them up, it does look like, you know, they are in about the same space as you can kind of see there. So I'm guessing, for the most part, the mechanism is relatively the same. So, you know, I can really understand that, because again, this was not meant to be a highly hyper detailed model train line, so cheaping out on essentially a kid's toy in this case, I think is fine, because for the most part, I don't think very much was compromised in this model. But again, on this side, the details are the same as the other. Got painted details such as the handrail, windows, all of that. Really nice to see. On the back, we got a painted tail lamp, again, very nice. And then, of course, the windows and the buffer beam is identical. It's really hard to mess up a paint job on Toby, because he is quite literally a brown box on wheels. Coming down to the roof, though, it's nice to see that all the detail is there. I love the way that a lot of toy companies handle doing Toby's bell. They still incorporate what is supposed to be the string connected to the bell, because of course the driver down here would pull the string and then it'd ring the bell. So it's still very nice to see that it is there, but of course they couldn't include it going up and over the bell like how you would realistically, because that would be too small of detail, would probably break off very easily. But it's still nice to see that it's incorporated. Chimney here is painted, this pipe detailing is painted, still very nice, a solid matte finish on the roof here. Absolutely lovely. Like, you look at this like, yep, that is a solid Toby model. Coming down to the bottom here for what is the mechanism, it does have 6 wheels. These 2 are dummy wheels. They don't do anything. They're not connected to anything, much like how with Thomas, Percy, Bill, and Ben, they actually do have the side rods that, you know, connect the wheels. This one just has the motorized back wheel right there, which a little different, but it makes sense because you wouldn't really see the coupling rod detail, even though realistically, Toby should have side rod detailing much like Thomas does, but since it's under this mechanism and you're probably not going to see it, and it is a kid's toy line, it saves Hornby some money there, and it really you're not really losing too much without having that coupling rod detail. So I completely understand that. And then of course the coupling system uses the same type of coupling system, which is oddly specific to this line. So unfortunately, unlike most Hornby items that have a hook and loop coupling, you cannot use these with traditional Hornby rolling stock or even run them on traditional Hornby or HO00 scale track, which is one of the biggest downsides with this line, because reaching over to the package, as I mentioned earlier, these characters up here, this is all you get. There is no, if, ands, buts about it, unless you want to go through and either buy some other Hornby rolling stock and replace the coupling system with either this or change them all to hook and loops. You could definitely very much so do that, but again, I'm not going to be the one to do it. I would have loved to have seen more rolling stock included, like, some more troublesome goods vans and all of that sort of stuff, some expanded engines like James, Edward, and all that. But one of the things I think is missing from even just this lineup, where is Henrietta? I mean, you have Annie and Clarabelle, which of course, they already had the molds to make an Annie and Clarabelle, but you'd think like, well, you got Toby here, he's kind of incomplete without Henrietta. So yeah, you could go out and buy the Bachmann Henrietta and modify it and whatnot, which I very much so might do. But I guess, granted, he would be still fucking massive compared to that Henrietta, but I still just think it's a little odd that there is no Henrietta for this line. But again, I think that showcases one of the major flaws with this line. It really could have used, some kind of thing to make it either compatible with Hornby track, much like the Clockwork Percy and the Thomas, which were released in other formats. But Bill, Ben, and Toby, yeah, you're kind of shit out of luck for those guys, unfortunately. But one of the things that I do really like, and it's something I did mention in the Bill video, and it is the fact that this right here is the mechanism where if you push it forward, it stops. You pull it backwards, it goes. I love the fact that it's still discreet, but it still pokes out enough so that you can very easily access it. Because I did have a big problem with my Clockwork Percy in the fact of trying to reach this little lever right here. It's definitely, you can see here, it's very hard to do unless you, one, take the roof off, or two, you use some kind of little screwdriver or your finger to really get up in there. You can even use the key itself. So I have discussed some of the size comparisons, but here he is with all of the other Clockwork engines that I do have in the line, plus just the original Hornby 040 Clockwork engine. And yeah, he really does stand out like a sore thumb in this lineup. He is absolutely massive. So I do have Toby all wound up here on the Ertl Thomas and Friends track, because unfortunately I do not have the normal Hornby Thomas and Friends track this is supposed to run on. And then the rainbow track that I have is shown in the Thomas video. I'm currently unable to find it, but it does run perfectly fine on Ertl Thomas and Friends track, so that is what we're going to be using here. I do have it connected to the troublesome truck. As you can see, this is how the coupling system works. It is very, very robust, but it does not do well with hills and stuff. But granted, the line didn't incorporate any hills, so it is very much so, it's very fair. So I guess without further ado, let's hit the switch and get this guy going. Oh my goodness, look at him go. So I stopped him, and I'll be honest, when I first set him off, I was not expecting him to move that fast. Maybe he goes a lot faster because he doesn't have any coupling rods, so maybe that's just causing less friction and interference, but my goodness, this thing is a speed demon. So this not only concludes this video, but also the reviews on the Clockwork engines. Unless I were to get the Thomas and Ben set, I really don't have a reason to review any of the other stuff, because Ben is identical to Bill, and then the troublesome truck is, well, the same as this troublesome truck outside of the face differences. So there's really nothing else for me to discuss, but of course, anytime I get the chance to show these guys, I happily will. I think this is a phenomenal Toby. It looks like Toby. It is definitely on the larger side, but I think that for what this line is doing, I can excuse the size differences because it is meant to be a toy line essentially, and is not meant to be a dead serious model, unlike the traditional Hornby line. So if I were to give this guy a final rating, I would definitely say for what it is, I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. It is a solid Toby model. I think it is absolutely phenomenal, but I'd say that once again, on a general sort of basis, I'd give it, funny here, a solid 7 out of 10. I think it's a great model, but again, unless you fit the very strict criteria of you have track for this to run on and you have an abundance of the Clockwork line, there really wouldn't be very much point in getting this, except for if you are dedicated to this line or just a diehard Thomas and Friends fan. I definitely know a certain guy who loves Toby just as much as me. Hi Stamp, if you're watching this video. By the way, Shop Stamp Play Rail Store, use my code right here to get 10% off your first order. But anyways, I think that this, all in all, it's a very nice model, but because it only works under very specific conditions, I can't recommend it to everybody. But if you do happen to find it for cheap, I couldn't recommend you pick it up enough. It is a very fun model nonetheless. So that's all I gotta say for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.
Spimpton ass! Spimpton ass! Yes! Spimpton, yes!